Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's the Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Watkis-Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
It is time for another episode of the Entrepreneurial You podcast, and I am your host, Watkis-Porter. Oh my gosh, if you've tuned into last week's episodes, then you are still pumped from that inspiration I got from, Lisa Nichols, and I'm sure you were inspired as well. Of course, it was a replay of an episode that aired last year, but man, I felt just as good listening to it the first this time around as I did when it first aired, So just Lisa speaking into my life from one sister to another, it was just simply refreshing, particularly because, we often hear that women don't support each other, which is not true, right? But this week, you're going to be hearing from someone who is blazing the trail, both as a medical doctor and an entrepreneur. Yes, you heard me right. But before I tell you who that is, you got to wait a little longer because I do have some persons to thank, those who make the mare go. They continue to support the Entrepreneurial You. So Watkis-Porter.com, of course, the National People's Cooperative Bank of Jamaica Limited, committed to the growth and development of their members, Profit Jumpstarter, and the Jamaica Stock Exchange, whose podcast, the Jamaica Stock Exchange and You, is hosted and produced by me. So please do give it a listen. And of course, here's a word from the JSC. And after that, I will be introducing my guest and getting our conversation going.
We needed to raise capital, but our experience with local financial institutions was that they were cautious and slow to act, and interest rates were far too high. We had real concerns about financing our business through outside equity investors and the possibility of interference. Could we get a fair valuation for our business? We had our own ideas about the business and its value. Should I go the traditional route of bank financing, or should I try the Jamaica Stock Exchange? So we made a call and experienced transformation of our business through conversations. I'm John Mafood, CEO of Jamaican Teas, and we're listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Give us a call today at 876-967-3271 to begin your transformation through conversation. We want to see your company listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Welcome back. And here's today's opening business tip, courtesy of the National PC Bank of Jamaica. Bookkeeping. One way to keep organized is bookkeeping, and this involves keeping detailed records, such as keeping track of inventory, expenses, revenues, etc. And this is important because it will help your business or direct it to grow financially. It is an important aspect of protecting and growing your business, especially financially. So that's from the National PC Bank of Jamaica. Thank you so much for that business tip. And yes, I know you've been waiting. So my guest on episode 275 of the Entrepreneurial You is David Walcott. Now, David is a medical doctor and entrepreneur with over 5 years experience as a founder, operator, and consultant to several businesses in the Caribbean. David is the founder and managing partner of Novamed, a healthcare firm designed to drive world-class healthcare resources into emerging markets. David's work is centered on driving the adoption of innovative local and regional healthcare solutions in the Caribbean. His academic profile includes a doctorate of philosophy at Oxford, Rhodes Scholar at that, let me just tell you, where his research focused on drug development in Crohn's, a mini MBA at INSEAD, and healthcare business studies at Harvard Business School. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Henika. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. When I look at all of the things that you do, and when I look at, I'm assuming and I'm trying to judge your age, I'm like, them don't really add up. But anyway, before we get into that, I want to know. You can
count by the gray hairs I have.
Let me ask you first and foremost, what do you love most about being Jamaican?
feel like being Jamaican gives you two things, and this was apparent to me when I left to the UK to study. I think one, it gives you a sense of groundedness. We tend to have a connection with the identity of being Jamaican that drives us to assume we're exceptional. So there's a level of confidence and groundedness in who you are, one. And two, I think it gives us a tremendous level of stress resilience. If you even look at the significance of Black in our flag and what that means in terms of being resilient in the face of hardship, it gives you a sense of just being able to navigate whatever turbulent waters you might face. And so those are two things that really stand out to me about being Jamaican.
Good things, ain't that the truth? I mean, talk about being self-assured, Jamaicans, we just know that we look about with Talawa, it doesn't matter where we are. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I did say earlier, when I look at you and when I look at what you've accomplished, it kind of seemed like there is some disparity because it kind of belie your age or what I assume your age to be, right? Which I don't know. But it just tells me, in other words, what I'm trying to say, that you've accomplished a lot. But let's go to the beginning,
you.
Before we, you're welcome. Before we even look at all of those, let's go to the beginning. How did that all start for you? Like, what was your upbringing like? What kind of young person was David? Just take us into that young David who, running around, playing games or doing whatever.
I'm the first of three to my parents who are still together today. So I had somewhat of I would say a stable family life, which I think has contributed significantly to bringing and my value systems. As a child, I was curious. Of course, when you're the firstborn and you're an only child for 6 years, you kind of have to become comfortable with yourself and build your own sense of curiosity surrounding the world around you. And I think that has followed me through to now where, I'm both curious and I would say in many ways self-sufficient. After growing up for the first 6 years, my sister came along and my brother 4 years later. I adopted, I would say, some, perhaps nurturing qualities in supporting their growth and development. Academically, I was never the bookworm. I still don't consider myself a bookworm, no. Even though I tend to agree with people who call me a nerd because I think it's important for us to be passionate about things. And I think when you're passionate about something, be it biology, be it physics, or be it dance or music, by definition, you kind of have to be a nerd, right? So I was never overly enthused with academic work until I think I entered fourth form. There's just something that clicked internally. I think there was an acute awareness of the fact that I really was the author of my destiny. Every day when I went to school, I was writing a new page in the chapter. And it was really up to me to determine what the story looked like from that point on. And it's a very simple thing to realize, but I think for someone who is, 13, 14, it can really drive a profound difference in how you view the world and how you view your place in the world. And so I consciously or subconsciously decided to actually apply myself to work. And that really looked like understanding what was required of me to get where I needed to go and just kind of putting in the reps needed to get there. And from there, it's really been just a cascade of the same thing, just understanding the value of putting out your best is ancient wisdom. Put yourself into what all you do. It's also said in the Bible. So for me, it was just a matter of kind of putting your best foot forward. And that's what I've been aiming to do for the past 20 plus years.
All right. So you said something about understanding what was required of you. What did you interpret that to mean? What's required of you?
So, it could be as simple as you have to understand photosynthesis in order to do well on this exam. But there's a much deeper sense, which is you have to be able to ensure that, you're able to provide a future for yourself and your family. And that, of course, can be broken down into smaller and smaller goals, which look like, okay, well, in order to do this, I have to align myself with a career that will generate this outcome. For me to align myself with a career that will lead to this outcome, I have to identify my passion. And as difficult as it is, work towards being a master of that craft and all the steps upstream of that. I think there's a superficial answer to that question, which is, what are the black and white things I need to do right now? And there's a deeper answer that says, what type of life am I looking to live? And what do I think I need to do to put myself in a position to live that type of life?
Both your parents are medical doctors, right? And you said it was prior to fourth form, you weren't really taking academics seriously. Now, what was the reaction of your parents? I mean, these are doctors and they're, professionals, and they expect all this from their children. What was it? What was their reaction?
I mean, they weren't happy as you'd expect. I remember dreading report card day. You get this report, and you based on your performance, you kind of know where you sit on the barometer. And you open it and you see things you don't like, but you have to take it home and deal with the consequences. And so those were days I dreaded, because my parents were serious about academic performance. However, and I think this actually worked to my benefit, while they were serious about me doing well, they didn't chastise me for not doing well. They'd have serious conversations with me, but they were conversations and not, maybe incrimination is the word I'm looking for. They'd expect me to understand that I should be disappointed, as opposed to making me feel, I suppose, shameful about the grades. And there's a level of, I think, empathy with that type of approach, and a level that kind of expects you to know you should do better. And I think that,
and to expect more of yourself, yeah?
Exactly, right. And I think those are kind of subconscious things that were guideposts for me in finding place in myself that, directed me towards valuing the work that I put out. And so eventually there was a transition from fearing report card days to really not minding them.
The fact that they're doctors, how much did that influence your decision to become a medical doctor as well?
I think it's inevitable, because, for it not to, we grow up and we form these identities with our parents' professions. We see it in, that's why family businesses exist, and call it family dynasties exist. As a child, you grow to appreciate your parents' craft. That's why many professional athletes have parents who are also athletes. So I think it's inevitable, but in terms of any kind of coercion, no. I mean, my personality is, and I try to be as independent, I think, as I can be. I'd say I'm, fortunate to be blessed with that as a fundamental trait. So it wasn't I didn't feel coerced. I felt like it was my decision, even if there were factors that kind of drove me towards, seeking that career. So there was no real pressure. And when I connected with being a doctor, it was me connecting with being a doctor for myself. There was no conscious awareness of my parents being doctors contributing towards that.
What kind of a personal gratification does one get from being in the medical profession?
I think it's one of the most wholesome professions, because if you look at the gratification one gets from charitable work, which has been documented over and over again to be significant, which is why, even billionaires want, one of the few things that billionaires want that they don't have is that sense of contribution, which is why, they donate to charity and, philanthropy and etc. That is the everyday life of a physician, or at least that's how I see it. Every day you get up and you're literally making the world a better place by making human beings biologically, physically, or mentally better. And the act of so doing, I think, is tremendously therapeutic, but also the gratitude you get from the people you've been able to help just gives you a sense of deep contribution that makes you aware of your purpose in this world, even if you never thought you had one. So I think it's one of the most wholesome, the most naturally wholesome professions that one can find. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I've ventured towards the dark side, and I'm now in the investment world. And I'm saying that, of course, teasingly, but being a medical doctor, I think, is is just one of the most beautiful careers one can find.
I'm glad you mentioned, being on the other side. And that's what we want to, talk about eventually. I'm going to take a little break and read a review. But before I take that break, David, what's your why?
I think that question is best answered by exclusion than by kind of definitely identifying it. I think we know our whys by understanding what things that are not our whys. And what my why is not is, pure financial gain. What my why is not is status. So by exclusion, I think my why is rooted in purpose. And the purpose I see for myself is driving societal transformation and building a present and a future for my family.
Absolutely. Sounds great. All right, let's take a break and have this review. So this review comes from Miss Duhaney out of the United States. And she says, awesome business podcast. I love the content and the diversity of guests, backgrounds, and career paths. I love how Henika embraces and celebrates Jamaican culture while being inclusive. I highly recommend this podcast to anyone interested in becoming an entrepreneur, in addition to established entrepreneurs. Thank you so much, Mr. Haney, out of the United States of America. And I appreciate you for not just listening, but also taking the time to leave a review. Let me know how you feel about what it is I'm putting out. Because, if I'm doing it and nobody's listening, nobody's engaged, then I may as well not do it, right? So thank you so much. And if you wrote a review, please send me an email at henikawatkisporter@gmail.com and let me know so that I can give you a shout out right here on the show. Wow. So let's come back talking with David Walcott. So let's transition right now. Let's move right into David talking about your entrepreneurial pursuits. And why did you think, wasn't it just enough to be a doctor and just leave it as it be and not do anything else?
I think they're personality traits, Seneca, and for me, I realize I'm very high in openness. And so for me, there's always this curiosity that kind of gets you asking, why not? I had an opportunity to divert from clinical medicine via the Rhodes Scholarship, be an academic for a few years. And so I took up that opportunity and I found myself gravitating towards the business part of healthcare more so because I felt like clinical medicine was too finite, whereas business was more open-ended. And science was a little bit too slow. And so for me, business and enterprise allowed me to have the kind of, open-ended creative expression of my knowledge. It would allow me to travel as well. So I'm also a very big fan of travel and exploring the world. And it was a way of kind of blending multiple competencies into one, right? So I was very much attracted towards the idea of doing business, and over time, that kind of vague, I would say, interest in business materialized into more and more concrete forms.
Sounds like the perfect marriage, huh? Best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, you're coming from the medical field into entrepreneurship, and as you said, very fine, very definitive stuff. This is it. This is what it is. It is science into the fluency of entrepreneurship and the business world. What were your support system like at that time? When you decided, and when did you decide first and foremost that, I'm going to try this thing? And what was that support system like? Who did you draw on?
I was asking lots of people for their opinions. And, I think you kind of have to connect with a deeper force on these things. So I would have prayed about it. I think the answer to all these sort of existential questions really lies in within ourselves. And I think for me, the most important thing was quieting myself to the point where, one, I could make myself okay with the uncertainty of departing from the beaten path, but two, accepting that I would be willing to accept the consequences of that decision. And I think that really just kind of came from kind of sitting with myself after having spoken to lots of people, so friends who were in the industry, in different industries, obviously my friends and family. And just realizing that it's a risk I'd be willing to take.
So now, Novamed, how did that come about? Talk to us about that and what's it really about?
So Novamed is really a vehicle that drives transformation of healthcare in emerging markets. And just to kind of break it down in simple terms as to what we do, I think you can transform industries through either helping existing businesses improve, their performance or get to their objectives, or by building your own businesses or acquiring such businesses. We started off with the former, so helping existing businesses in emerging markets, so Caribbean, Latin America, etc., achieve their business objectives. And so we gained a fair bit of expertise, business organization and operations, and the different functions of a business. And over time, as we amassed expertise and amassed some capital, we decided to start and acquire businesses of our own. So what Novamed is now is a strategic acquirer of healthcare companies, real estate and technology. But we started off as a healthcare strategy and management consulting firm.
Okay, but you're more into acquisition now of technology firms, real estate, and so on. What's the ultimate goal?
So the ultimate goal is to transform healthcare in emerging markets. I mean, we invest mostly in healthcare. We'll be acquiring hospitals and clinics, etc. We make strategic real estate investments as well as strategic investments in technology. But ultimately, our goal is to drive societal transformation through bringing world-class healthcare into emerging markets.
All right. And so that moves me into your recent acquisition of Knutsford Court Hotel. Yeah. How much can you tell us about that project? I know it's still in infancy, and so they're not allowed to share a lot right now, but how much can you tell us about that?
I mean, the most I can tell you is that we're excited about it. It represents
besides that,
in Kingston's landscape. We have some interesting plans for the property. I had been traveling a lot for the past 5 years, both learning healthcare systems as well as going to these kind of high-level convenings, Davos, for example. And a lot of what I would have seen and learned has been infused into this property, which, of course, as you know, is myself, Kirk, and Kevin Donaldson. Mm-hmm. So we have this shared vision that we are pursuing, and we're just very excited to make it happen. It's going to be a business park. It's not going to be a hotel. It's going to sort of be an epicenter for what we are doing in the Caribbean, but also what fellow entrepreneurs and business people are doing to uplift the region. So, we're very excited about having this physical space to represent our kind of collective vision.
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to see what I'm, to see what I'm going to be experiencing when I pass what was the Knutsford Court Hotel into something totally different. So I'm really excited about that for you guys as well. And congrats. That's a big deal, I believe.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
So outside of that, what else can we look forward to? We're coming to the close, of our conversation. And I want you to let our listeners know, what can we look forward to from Novamed? You have some brilliant people on, who are part of your team. For one, I know Kirk very well, and what he's been up to, and been watching his progress as well. He's also been on this show before. So really, really excited. I know that it augurs well for the future of Jamaica. But what are some of the other things that we can look forward to?
As you know, the industry we're in is an industry where we have to be conservative with information, but
as much as you can say,
you can expect us to be faithful to our mandate, which is to transform healthcare through investing in hospitals, real estate, and technology. So more of that will come. We have a very specific investment thesis, and we have specific ways in which we analyze the different opportunities, which I think are pretty non-traditional just by virtue of our existence as a non-traditional investment entity. So I think you can expect interesting, maybe expected, maybe unexpected acquisitions, announcements, etc. And I'm personally looking forward to the growth of the company, and I'm seeing some very clear paths for growth. Very excited on my side, and so you can look forward to much more of what you've seen with Knutsford in the days to come.
All right. What's the one piece of advice that you would give to, say, a medical doctor who wants to enter into entrepreneurship, but it's kind of like, I don't think that's for me right now. I'm more about taking care of my patients and all these things that come with what you do.
Every decision has consequences, both good and bad, right? And there's no risk-free decision. Medical doctors have to kind of just be aware of their risk and just realize that you can make a decision it's better to make a decision based on information than the lack of information. So if you've never tried entrepreneurship, then you really have no factual basis upon which to align your decision. What you need to do is to acquire those data points. Explore being an entrepreneur, not in a way that compromises your bread and butter, but understand enough and gain enough experience on the side to be able to make a decision as to whether this is something that you'd be interested in doing. Which really is to say, take action towards it and reassess. I mean, it's as simple as that. You don't want to be in a position where you're kind of vacillating in this no man's land, where you haven't actually tried something and you have this nagging desire to try, but take action, reassess.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when I wanted to try business and, go into entrepreneurship. One of the things that really propelled me forward towards it was the fact that I did not want 10 years down the road, I look back and say, what if I had done this? It was so important for me to have tried it and failed perhaps. And I failed many times, but I don't consider them failures. It's just a part of the journey. And each time I start not from scratch, but I start from experience. So it is good, as you say, to just look at it and assess where necessary, reassess where it is necessary. All right. So David, what would be your final thoughts and how might our listeners be in touch with you?
Listeners can email me, pretty approachable, david@novamedhealth.com. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch. Shoot me an email anytime. Yeah. As I said, take action in the direction of your dreams. And once you've landed on something, I'm going to use a quote from one of my good friends, Gordon Swaby. Ignore the noise, focus and execute.
Oh yeah. I've seen that a lot on Twitter, right? Ignore the noise, focus and execute and go in the direction of your dreams. I love it. I totally love it. And I want to say thanks to you so much, David Walcott, for spending time with me today on the Entrepreneurial You podcast.
You're very welcome, Henika. Enjoy the conversation. Thanks again.
Absolutely. And to my guests, my listeners, you've been hearing some background noise. I want to apologize because first, David is on the job. I actually took him off for a few moments and I'm actually, believe it or not, in the room where I just completed 2 exams. And I decided, we have to have this conversation. So I asked for some time to be in the room. And if you can hear some noise in the background as a result of that as well. So I do apologize for that, right? But it was worth us having this conversation today. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Entrepreneurial You podcast with David Walcott as my guest today. David did leave a number of gems with us, and one of the very potent ones was just go steadfast in the direction of your dreams. Just go forward in the direction of your dreams. And that is a piece of advice that is applicable to anybody who wants to accomplish anything at all. You have a goal and you want to accomplish it. That is applicable to you. So go towards the direction of your dreams. So what's your standout moment? Please send me your feedback now at henikawatkisporter@gmail.com or on social media at henikawatkisporter. Remember to follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app or connect with me for all things podcasting at henikawatkisporter.com. Before I give you according to the scriptures, how could I not tell you today's money tip? Wow, I have to close with today's money tip brought to you by Profit Jumpstarter, and it's to take control of your emotions. When it comes to investing for the long term, you need a systematic approach. Don't allow your emotions to make your investing decisions, as this is a dangerous path to take. Always aim to maintain a disciplined approach when investing. Thank you so much, Profit Jumpstarter. And let me just jump right back over to the scriptures for today. According to the scriptures, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Philippians 4:6. And I was so excited to hear David talk about the fact that he prayed about it. That's so important for me as well. Any decision I'm about to make, to pray, because you always get the answers. The answers don't really lie with you it lies really when you go deeper into yourself and consult your creator, who is higher, bigger than who you are. Is very important, and that I was happy to hear that. So until next time, do take care of yourself. Walk good.